Hello, good morning, friends. I am Pradeep and I am a Scrum Master for almost 2.5 years for one of the product development team. And today I will be discussing Agile Scrum fundamentals. So let's get started. First with agenda. In first place, why we need Agile framework. Then we'll see what is Agile methodology, different formats, and we'll go through the Scrum, which is the most wide implementation of Agile. Then we'll deep down into the Scrum through the functionalities of the Scrum, various components of the Scrum such as Scrum roles, different types of meetings performed throughout the Scrum, that is ceremonies, and Scrum artifact. What are the kind of inputs are provided and what is the output produced out of the Scrum. And then we'll see from bottom to top approach, that is implementing Scrum from team level to the organization wide, that is scaling of Scrum. And finally we are open for question and answers. Feel free to ask a question during the session and challenge the ideas. So let's move on. Wow, this image most of people or specifically IT people have seen, and we have been doing a product development for decades and decades using this framework. This framework is very well known as waterfall. In this framework we used to do requirement gathering, the designing, coding, implementation, and finally moving into the maintenance phase and start again a new product development. That was a phased execution. We used to do development using various set of phases sequentially executed. So what are the problems we struggle with waterfall and why there is a necessity of agile to come into the picture? So let's look into it, why there is a need of agile framework. Actually, the classical methods such as waterfall of software development have many more disadvantages. I have discussed few highlighted one, such as high efforts during planning phase. Waterfall is a product development methodology where release cycle is from 9 months to 1 year, or it may be stretched around 1.5 years, where in the first slot we do lots of requirement gathering and full planning for the whole release, where we have lots of assumptions, and the problem is the moment we hit the change our complete plan goes onto the toss. So we put so much amount of planning efforts and ultimately we end up into the changed or updated version of the plan. So that's bigger problem, that is due to the phased wise execution. Then we move to the next, that poor requirements conversion in rapid changing environments. When we work into the waterfall, we freeze the requirements, we accumulate as much as data from the customers, from the environment, from various experts and other stakeholders. And once we have acquired a sufficient amount of data, then we freeze the scope of the requirement and we start development for the almost next 6 to 9 months period. But the problem is with the recent technology shift in the last decade, we have seen so many changes into the technology, new technologies coming, lots of tools, alternative tools, huge amount of products are coming into the market. So eventually customers are coming with lots of changes based on their environment, based on their needs or customer expectations. But in waterfall, once we freeze the requirement scope and we start the development, it is very hard to move or to change or update requirements, and it creates a so chaos that the new updated requirement creates a conflict to the existing one, and that's where we suffer a lot in waterfall. Then long awaiting release and high waiting time for customers. As I said, these days technology is at the very high pace. Customers don't want to wait for long. They need quick deliveries, short duration cycles of the development, and valuable or the very high priority features they want into the product, actually into the production. But in waterfall, we have to follow all the phases all the time sequentially, and we would be able to deliver features to the customer after like 9 months to 1 year. And that long period customer is not willing to wait, or they ultimately, even sometimes, the feature may not be useful for the customer itself. So what we have gained is no value for the release itself, we can say. Then waterfall software development process are too heavy, complex and cumbersome. As in waterfall, we do everything in a phase-wise manner: requirements, then designing, then implement coding, testing, and implementation. Where at the start of the phase, early release of the phase, we have lots of assumptions. We know very less about the product or how product will be working, behaving into the customer environment. We create lots of assumptions, and once we start implementing, developing, then we see a real ground breakthroughs. That's where a complexity occurs, that on real ground this is not doable, or customer is expecting something different, and very hard to replan everything, very difficult to convince team members, and ultimately there is a loss of motivation for all team members, and it is quite a big headache for the whole team and as well as for management. Then too many things are done that are not directly related to the software product being produced. We follow so many things in waterfall, like various planning meetings, various documentation processes, or various serviceability features. The customer may not want them. Customer wants something which is immediately consumable, more productive, and customer can increase ROI. Where in a waterfall model, we set at the start that these 40 or the 70 features we will be building through this release, where where like 15-20 may not be really useful for the customer, but sake of doing or following the processes, we try and implement there. So that is a lot of a heck while performing product development in a waterfall environment, and that's the reason people or the IT folks are looking for new framework which is easy, less complex, less rigid, and easy to understand and implement. So here is Agile. Agile is a structured and disciplined approach to iterate development cycle. Yes, it's like we do all the phases in waterfall, where in Agile we combine all phases in one cycle, and we just we just cut down the whole release time of the product development to the very small chunks, and we divide into the multiple iterations or multiple cycles within one cycle. We do not just tend to do a development or designing, then next testing, but rather what Agile focuses on iterative development, where we will be carrying out a complete designing, requirement breakdown, understanding them, then developing, coding, testing, and complete sets of various testing like automation, stress test, performance test, and we create one shippable product increment that is ready to consume by the customer. And it can be done only within a 1 to 4 weeks. That is a one sprint. We'll go through the in coming couple of slides. So it is a set of practices that accommodate changing requirement. Now we have shortened our release cycle. So we don't have to plan for like 9 months to 1 year, right? We just have to worry for 1 month or 2 weeks iteration or sprint. Now planning is more easier because planning for 2 weeks or 3 weeks it's quite simpler, and planning only handful of requirements, priority requirements are quite easy. There is a lot more predictability during planning. We know how many resources are with us, what are they working with, what are their skill sets, availability, and there are lots of other factors in development. So we have quite assurance, higher level of assurance during the planning for the sprint, where now in case if any requirement evolves, customer tend to think that this can be improved or this requirement can be tweaked so I would get maximum benefit. Now we haven't done full level of planning or fixed rigid design. We have open-ended scope for our design. Now we can introduce that change. So customer would get a maximum value. He would be satisfied that his new requirement would be consumed during product development, and we don't have a lot of heck or the trouble to change the requirements because we haven't placed lots of efforts and we have a less rigid design. Then agile methods are considered lightweight, people-based rather than plan-based. Exactly, significantly improve quality of software. Now, we carry out product development in 1 week to 4 weeks cycle. Maximum time limit allowed in agile is 4 weeks time, so month long. But the best standard practices in agile, lots of, or I would say maximum companies perform iteration of 2 weeks because it is very comfortable, easy to perform, and easy to produce something more usable, consumable within a given timeline. 1 week is quite short and 4 week is quite lengthy. So most of people try and go for 2 weeks iteration cycle. So it's pretty lightweight where we can have a very good focus and team members can understand the set of requirements very well. In agile, the main focus is on individuals and the communication they carry out, because in agile team size is not like 40 folks or the like 20 developers, 15 testers, 2 IDD or documentation team, 2 architectures. It's not like that. In agile we have very small teams. Like standard convention for agile is 7 team members plus minus 2. That means team size can be from 5 to the 9, but not more than 9. That's what standard convention says, because it's very easy to communicate with all team members. Number of communication channels would be less if we have limited team members. It would be very good visibility for all team members across the development for the 2 weeks iteration or 3 weeks or maybe 4 weeks, and we need not to follow the plan all the way. It does not mean we don't need a plan, but we need a plan which is evolving. We need requirements, these are improving. We can reprioritize them. We have to evaluate them to the extent which is one valuable, which is more important, and which is more productive. So planning will be based on all this, and it would be kept on evolving. That's why in Agile we value planning than planned execution. Now, in Agile, there is a significant improvement in quality. There has been several questions in many more sessions I have seen that people stress, or the lots of dev folks stress that if if we perform 2 to 3 weeks iteration, how can we get time to carry out regression or to perform all sets of testing? But it was possible within waterfall, like 2 months regression, 1 month hardening time. But here I would say it is a much easier. We need not to test all the 30, 40 or 60 features which are scheduled for a release. In one sprint, we just have to worry about 3, 4 features which are very high priority and which we decided to build in this current sprint. So in this, QA team has to first go and write the test cases while the development is in a progress, negative test cases, positive test cases, various performance related test cases. And once each and every task is completed, there is another subsequent task assigned to the QA person, that he will be get notified that this user story has completed. Now this set of test cases or test variations has to be executed, and these will be limited. And how we can now, once the features or the requirements has been validated, very well tested, immediately designer or the developer will come to know if there are any flaws or defects. They can go ahead and fix them. That's quite easy catch, and need not to keep in a pending task till the end of the release. And there is another aspect. What about release regression testing? Nowadays, there is a lot of stress on automation testing. So many teams are going for 100% automation. I know, and we all know that it's not likely to be all time 100%, but with a lesser manual intervention, it is possible to achieve. Like even 90-95% code coverage or the testing all the features for the product over the night or over the couple of nights is a brilliant idea, and it has been implemented. At least in my organization, we follow the same practice. With every new build, every daily night build, we trigger automation, and if anything comes like a defect or problem, it will notify the QA team and they will post a defect. That's what we perform a regression. So we have directly cut down a 2 months regression cycle. We do it every another day through automation. So that's where quality comes in picture. Just build it, immediately test it, and release it, ready to consume. That's the approach of Agile. Let's move to the next slide. There is another important slide from Agile. Agile Manifesto. Agile, basically, if we speak about the history of Agile, Agile was being developed by 17 folks. The first foundation was laid down by 17 team members from different organizations. They came down to one place and they discussed what are the issues with waterfall, and they want a something reliable framework which can give them some flexibility. There is a lot of rigidity in waterfall. They want to move away from that, and they decided to design some framework which will allow them flexibility and maximize customer value. And that's where Agile framework was written. They have mentioned 4 values and 12 principles. The values really make sense, and if we implement them in our day-to-day life while working into the Scrum environment, you would definitely see there is a lot more difference. So let's see what are the values. We'll go to the next slide, which is a more easy to understand. individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Excuse me. Here in Agile, we stress on individual and their communication channel. Earlier in waterfall, what happened? We tend to define so many processes and tightly coupled with certain tools that we have to follow them, we have to go through them, we have to be bounded with them. But it creates a lots of unnecessary tasks or unnecessary space where we are less productive, and which doesn't really yield anything good to the customer and development team as well. Where in Agile, with the smaller iterations or the sprints, smaller team size, we directly focus on what is to be done, what is the most valuable, and we communicate with various ceremonies. We are going to talk shortly about them, what are the meetings, and it is like a very important feedback loop. Agile is being successful because of its feedback loop. At every step, Agile gives some feedback to the team at every level of development, from daily to the weekly to the monthly and till the release. At every level. In various meetings, we get feedback and we have an opportunity to correct the problems or improve ourselves. And that's where the true capability of Agile comes into the picture. So we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Which does not mean that now henceforth we will not follow any processes and will not take help of any tools. No, we would be still having some processes, some guidelines to be carried out, some tools to be used. They are here to ease our life, but we will value the things on the left side more than the right. So let's move on to the working software or comprehensive documentation. In old releases or product development time, we have created huge set of documentation. In case of this scenario, follow these links, follow these steps, you will get this thing, this problem, this solution, and you try these kind of tricks, and possibly the solution may work. Or if you don't get to the solution, or if your problem is not resolved, then call to our customer service or open up a ticket, right? And that is a pain for the customer. They don't want documentation. They want products to do something, product to perform as per the expectations. That's where working software comes into the picture. As I said, we will be working on only priority or valuable requirements in Agile, not on all 70-80 requirements in a one go. And we will be keep updating the level of requirements or priority of the requirements, what customer wants. That's where customer will get a maximum value. He will get what is needed. His problem will go in a first attempt and he will be more satisfied. Then customer collaboration or customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What happened in earlier releases or waterfall is, once we get the requirements from the customer, we create one design, then we define what are the requirements we are going to implement, what would be the features, and our legal and sales team go ahead with the contract that these are the features will be delivered after a certain duration of time. And once we start during the development, once we start developing a product, after a couple of months later, customer will come back to us saying that he need some requirement to be tweaked or some enhancement to be made, and that's where we show them that, hey boss, this is the what contract we have signed, and we're not going to change anything in a given requirement. That's not in our scope. Would customer would be satisfied? I don't think so. And if he really desperate, then we'll push him for the change request by gaining a lot more dollars. But at the end, what customer is getting a very costly, either very costly software or the software without any valuable requirements. Because in a development, we are evolving the requirements. We are more and more understanding during the phase of development, and that's where if customer wants any change, we can offer him a flexibility using customer collaboration. We involve customer throughout the development process. I said we have a very big feedback loop in Agile, and customer is involved throughout the development process at various levels, so he can go ahead and check what we are doing. Is it up to the mark, or is it being what he has expected? And ultimately he will get what is expected or what he wants: more reliable working software. Then the last one, responding to the change over following a plan. It's a very important factor in Agile. In a waterfall, what we do, or early other classical methods of product development, we create a very solid plan for like 1 year, and we start developing with lots of assumptions, and we realize that there are lots of problems. Our assumptions are not valid, and we need a change. And our design is so tightly built that now introducing change itself is problematic. Sometimes it really backfires on us, that we may not able to do such change, or changing at this point of time would create a really big regression impact on our existing product. But in Agile, it's very simple. We just go for a development of couple of weeks. So in like 2-3 iterations, if we understand that there is a change, then it's not that too big development we have did, or it's not that too complex design we have already prepared that we would not be able to modify it. We know what pieces we have added. We know we have built one simple framework of design, and we'll keep adding newly refined and simple pieces of product or the features into our design. That's we will keep incorporating a new feature into our design and making it more reliable and robust. So it's important to keep agile, to keep updated ourselves rather than following only a fixed plan. These are the values of the Agile defined in Agile Manifesto. You can go ahead and check, there is a site URL agilemanifesto.org, where you can see values, principles, and the pioneering folks of Agile. And there is a lot more other information on that. Now we'll quickly check Agile methods. Excuse me. Agile is not, lots of time we see Scrum is Agile. Yes, absolutely. There is no deviation. But Scrum is not only a method of Agile. Agile is a framework. It can be implemented using various methods. Scrum, Extreme Programming, that is XP. Then Kanban, Lean Kanban, very famous in Japan or some parts of US. Then Dynamic System Development Method, DSDM, Agile Modeling, and AUP, Agile Unified Process. but the most wide implementation of Agile is using Scrum and XP. That's where IT folks knows Scrum is Agile. So basically today we'll be talking about the Scrum framework. Now, what is Scrum? Scrum is not something invented in IT. Scrum is an old concept and it is being used in a rugby game. I believe most of us know rugby game where as shown in picture that ball has to be passed through the team member at smaller increments towards the line where we have to push the ball. That is our ultimate goal. And that's what we all mean the Scrum. Scrum is a self-organizing team. Basically, the team members in a Scrum are not governed by anybody. It does not mean that we don't have hierarchy, but Scrum team itself is a self-sufficient. They inspect and adapt. They learn through feedback loop. That's where the self-organizing teams come into the play. Product progresses in series of 2 to 4 weeks long sprint. Yes, Scrum is implemented into the small chunks of cycles, that is sprint, and it can scale from 2 to 4 weeks, even 1 to 4 weeks, but 2 weeks is the most widely used timeline for a sprint. Then we have a product backlog in a Scrum. Various other backlogs, we'll be talking about them in some time. And Scrum is not like set of guidelines, fixed guidelines. You have to do that. It's a framework. You can customize it as per your expectations, the way you want to implement it as per your domain. It is a set of rules define how we should go and implement this methodology. So let's move to the next slide. Wow, this is the one we all work and we all looking forward to implement in our environment or in our organization. Scrum framework. Everything is defined on a single slide. As we have discussed, Scrum is a method where product development is performed within 1 to 4 weeks of iteration or the cycle. Sprint and iteration are both are same. They are interchangeably used in various other organizations. Some would prefer sprint or some may use iteration, but both mean same. So how Scrum works? First we'll see product backlog. We have a sets of requirement before we start development. What are the features we want to develop? What are the requirements we have? What we are actually would be doing for this release is all defined within a product backlog. In simple words, it is a bucket containing all list of requirements and it is managed by product owner. Product owner is like a manager for the product dev team, and he is taking care of product backlog. So what product owner do? He talks to the customer, and product owner can be a direct customer, project manager, stakeholder, users, and product owner is one role, not necessary to be product manager. So his most important basic job is to rank all the requirements as the customers' expectations. The most valued requirements would definitely list at the top of the bucket, like 1, 2, 3. They are very high priority requirements. And these requirements keep on changing as we move ahead with the release product development. So it the product backlog keeps evolving, new requirements come into the bucket, and product owner keep maintaining, managing them. Then once all the requirements are prioritized, now product owner defined that these are the requirements we have to take it for the development for the first iteration or the first sprint. Then if we consider we have a 2 weeks sprint, then at the first day of every sprint, it is mandatory for us to plan for that sprint, what we would be doing for next 2 weeks, like 10 days, 5 days a week. So what we would be developing, what are the requirements we'll be working on next 10 days or 2 weeks. So whole team comes into the picture, like team is a cross-functional team. It is not specific development team only. The team means where architecture, developer, QA, UI, UX, all guys are involved, and one Scrum Master is there and product owner. So all they come together and sit on the very first day of the every sprint. They plan and decide to pick up the requirements for the next 2 weeks. Team knows how much they can consume, right? It is very well known, and it is the most important job of the Scrum Master to keep a track of the team status, like how many team members are available for the next 2 weeks, what is our velocity, the rate of work we complete within a given sprint, then efficiency of the team members, the technology understanding, or the various any other blocker issues or hardware software related concerns. And keeping in mind all that, team decide to select like first 4 requirements. Then they discuss all requirements, they break down into the smaller chunks and executable task, and they can be entered into the simple Excel sheet, or there are various tools available like Rally from the Rally Dev, then Jira, and various other tools available into the market, Mingle from ThoughtWork, and there is some tool from Microsoft as well. So it's about fetching first top priority requirements for the current sprint in a meeting, discussing them. They decide the size, and size of each user story or the task is estimated by the team members. It's not by product owner or Scrum Master. It is a team who decide how much efforts are required, and they themselves commit to the task. Individual team member get assigned some task to themselves. Once all task has been planned and defined, they are listed as a sprint backlog. Sprint backlog is a list of user story, very well defined set of tasks to be performed into the current iteration or sprint for the next 2 weeks. So we start implementing these tasks. Team get started with the development or the user story, various other tasks with respect to the user stories. Then every another day, whole team meet for like 15 minutes. That is a maximum allowed time. That is a daily scrum. That's where here is that daily scrum meeting. where team discuss what they are working on, what they did, and is there any blockers, any other stuff. The important three questions are being discussed by individual team member is what they did yesterday, what they're planning to do it today, and is there any blocker or impediments they have. So it is Scrum Master's responsibility if they have any blocker or concerns to resolve them, to keep away team or to keep isolated team from external barriers and keep team in a comfort zone so they can go ahead with the product development or feature development, where Scrum Master keep a track of execution using burn down or burn up charts. It is very easy artifact from the Scrum to see what we are doing and where we are during the sprint. In this Scrum meeting, strictly no status update. I have seen many more Scrum teams in many more meetings. Lots of folks tend to start discussing the blockers, but that is not the Scrum meeting or daily stand-up. In daily stand-up, we just have to keep aware all the team members that what we are working on, where we are. For status tracking, we have lots of other tools, lots of other systems where we can easily go ahead and update the status. But in daily Scrum, only to keep updated and aware of what we are doing, where we are, what we have committed, are we going to achieve or not in a given sprint. That's it. So that's the daily Scrum, and it is also well known as a daily stand-up. It is a time-boxed meeting, very well fixed time-boxed meeting, 15 minutes. It should not exceed more than 15 minutes. So throughout the iteration, throughout the sprint, team goes through daily meeting, daily stand-up calls, and whatever problems or issues they face, they are being discussed in other meetings like breakout sessions, where necessary or required folks come into the discussion room and resolve the issue. And at the end of the sprint, every sprint, team produces some important artifact, that is shippable product increment. This is the one where this is well developed, coded, very well tested and accepted by product owner. That's where we call it as a shippable product increment. If product owner decide to ship to the customer, then it should be ready. It should fulfill the criteria of done. We may discuss later on the done criteria, but it should satisfy the acceptance criteria. And then at the end of the sprint, team go ahead with one more ceremony, that is meeting, sprint review meeting. This is the one where all team members, product owners, Scrum Master, stakeholders joins the meeting, and team demo the stakeholders what they have built throughout the sprint, and they try to accumulate feedback from the stakeholders, wherever the necessary improvements are required, Scrum Master note them down and assign to the requisite person. Team try and understand whatever they have built and is it up to the mark or not, whatsoever the requirements they have committed at the start of the beginning of the sprint, have they achieved or have they completed these feature development and satisfied the customer. That's where all being discussed in a sprint review meeting. Usually sprint review meeting is like 2 hours for the 2-week sprint. Normally the convention is 1 hour a week. So if we have a 2 weeks iteration or sprint, then sprint review meeting should not last more than 2 hours. And finally, we come down to the sprint retrospective. There is another important ceremony of the Scrum, and that is mostly skipped by the Scrum teams. But it is an important, very important feedback loop. In sprint retrospective, only Scrum teams join this discussion, where whole team discuss what they did well, what they did not, what they have to stop doing, wrong practices or something which is not required, what they have to start doing, what is more effective or efficient, and what they have to continue, which have they followed in a good form. So these three questions they discuss. Scrum Master take a note of all these minutes of meeting, the important points, and assign individuals to this point. It's not about updating the documents and just go ahead and start with the next iteration or the sprint. It is about understanding the problem areas and improving ourselves by assigning to the team members and getting executed into the actions. And that's where the agile teams keep improving themselves throughout the product development cycle. So let's move on to the next slide. As we discussed, Scrum projects may progress in a series of sprints. These sprints last for 2 to 4 weeks, and sprint duration is a time boxed which cannot be changed. Even if requirement may not be completed or going outside scope of the sprint, still sprint duration remains same. They would not be changed. They are fixed. And in given sprint, we have to do all designing, coding, testing, and build shippable product increment. One more important thing. Lots of product owners or the stakeholders during the sprint execution or the middle of the sprint try to add some priority or immediate requirements, very high priority requirements. But it is a standard convention of the Scrum that for a given current sprint, once we get started, no requirement would be added. Even if requirement hits the floor, it would be added to the product backlog. We will not add this requirement for the current sprint because team is not prepared for that. So, strictly speaking, scope is frozen for the current iteration or sprint. We will do only what we have defined or committed during sprint planning meeting. Scrum framework. As we discussed, there are 3 roles: product owner, Scrum Master, and development team. Product owner is a role can be performed by multiple folks or multiple entities like customers, stakeholders, users, product manager, but there should be only one authority entitled as product owner. Then Scrum Master. Scrum Master is a very important role. He is a servant leader. He is a basically facilitator for the whole sprint. And development team, which is actually performing a committed task. Then we have seen various meetings are carried out throughout the sprint duration, like sprint planning, the very first day of the sprint, then daily Scrum meeting, which is also known as a daily stand-up. We perform every day for 50 minutes, And at the end of the sprint, we go through the sprint review and sprint retrospective. And there are some artifacts, there are some inputs and outputs. These are product backlog. We discussed that all the product related requirements are being stacked for the upcoming sprints. That is a product backlog, which is maintained and owned by product owner. Sprint backlog is a set of tasks or user stories or requirements which are going to executed or completed by development team. And during the sprint, Scrum Master prepares various charts, burn down, burn up charts. Well, burn down charts states the how much work to be completed from now, from current point of time. And burn up chart shows how much we have achieved till this point. So these charts are very easy to create, very simple to understand, and gives very precise picture of our current progress during the sprint. And finally, what we produce is product increment, which is accepted by product owner and the customer. Here is a Scrum team, product owner, Scrum Master, and development team, what we have discussed. Product owner define the feature of product, decide on release dates and contents. That is, product owner's job is to define how many sprints to be accommodated within a given release date. What kind of requirements he is trying to push for the current release, and so he can go ahead and prioritize them into the product backlog. He's the one who knows how to deliver maximum value to the customer. He is responsible for that and trying to increase return on investment for the customer by delivering high value requirements. He keeps on updating the product backlog by prioritizing the feature, and there is concept like time to market. So where within a given minimum time, how we can ship maximum requirements to the customer. Adjust features and priority every iteration as needed. As the iteration progresses, as the sprint progresses, product backlog is get updated by product owner, and the most valued or important stories or requirements are ranked at higher level by the product owner. And at the end, in the sprint review, product owner has authority to reject or accept the delivered work or the shippable increment. As we said, Scrum Master is a servant leader who helps the team to develop product increment smoothly without any hiccups. And he facilitates all the ceremonies like sprint planning meeting, review meeting, retrospecting, and daily scrum. He takes primary responsibility of removing any kind of impediments for the team, and he tries shielding the team from the external interfaces in a development environment. Typically, Scrum team is 5 to 9 people. They are cross-functional, where Dev, QA, UI, UX, all folks are included. And most important, Scrum team members should be full-time. They should not be part-time, because it definitely impacts the capacity or the number of features delivered during the sprint. There is a term called as a velocity, and it depends on the availability and number of people involved in a product team. These are ceremonies as we discussed: sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review meeting, retrospecting, and there is one more ceremony or meeting: product backlog refinement or grooming session. Where all team members discuss the product requirements in detail and help product owner to rank them or stack them in a priority manner, and it is being carried out once a week, or possibly if requirements are large, then twice a sprint. This is the pictorial representation what we perform in a sprint planning meeting. Various set of steps we perform: sprint, 2 to 4 weeks long iteration, and what we carry out in daily scrum: 50-minute stand-up meeting, no problem solving. We have breakup sessions or spikes where we discuss the issues, but here only we discuss 3 questions: what we did yesterday, what we will do it today, and if there are any blockers or impediments. Sprint review meeting: team represent what it is accomplished during sprint. We discuss and we demo to the customer or stakeholders. Maximum 2 hours, that's why it is a time boxed. Sprint retrospective, where we discussed what we need to start doing, what are the wrong practices we need to stop doing, and what we have to continue, which we are doing good. We should not skip that. That's very important in feedback loop. That's the end of the presentation.